this video, we're going to be looking at the HVAC control function block. Now, as we looked at in the last video, there are basic thermostat and humidistat control functions. However, these are designed to control a single output. So something like an exhaust fan or a heater, or a single humidifier or dehumidifier. In order to operate a HVAC system with multiple outputs, without creating a bunch of function blocks in order to accomplish that, we use the integrated HVAC function block. Let's open up our add a function dialog, and we'll see here that we have an HVAC/RH function. Let's add that to the workspace. Let's open it up and see what's inside. On our Rules tab, we don't get access to very much until we've configured some equipment. So let's take a look at the Equipment tab. On the Equipment tab, we have a selection for the environment sensor, the system type, and then HVAC and humidity control options. There are different ways of controlling an HVAC system and different components that can be used to do so. Let's take a look at the different devices that are commonly used to control HVAC equipment in growing rooms. Let's go to our Devices tab in this room. Here we have our SXC environment sensor that's going to read our temperature, humidity, our ambient light levels. We can also get it with CO2 and downward looking infrared to read the plant canopy temperature. We also get VPD. Here we also have a relay module. This is an RD8 relay module. The RD8 relay has 8 programmable outputs. These outputs can be used in any variety of ways, including controlling the HVAC, controlling humidifiers, dehumidifiers, and other on-off type devices that can be controlled from a dry contact. We also have the new temperature humidity controller, which is an integrated controller including a temperature humidity sensor and 6 dry contact outputs that have a predefined configuration. In our traditional configuration where we have canopy sensors and a dry contact module, the canopy sensors will feed the environment data to the controller, and the function block will then decide how to operate the relays based on how we have set them up. We'll take a look at that when we configure the function block. Our temperature humidity controller is much simpler in that we are typically only sending set point data to the temperature humidity controller. We can also send temperature and humidity data from canopy sensors to a temperature humidity controller. This allows us to have a more accurate temperature and humidity reading in the environment while still using the temperature humidity controller to operate the HVAC. In the event that the environment sensor is not able to send data to the temperature humidity controller, or the temperature humidity controller loses its connection with the rest of the control system, it will fall back on its internal temperature and humidity sensor and the internal set points that it last received. Now let's take a look at how we configure the function blocks to use these different components. First, let's take a look at the traditional approach of using a canopy sensor and a relay module. So we'll select the sensor that's in our canopy. We're going to be doing a standard dry contact control system, which is the default. Next, we're going to enable HVAC control. So I'm going to select my Room 1 relays, which is what my HVAC system is connected to. I'm going to select fan. Again, I would typically want to label these outputs. Heat. I'm going to select cool. I have a 2-stage cool. Okay. Next, I'm going to select humidity control. And again, I'm going to be using my Room 1 relays. For dehumidification, they can be on separate ones, but I'm going to put them on the same one. Again, I can have multiple stages if I want. Okay. So I've configured my outputs here. I'm going to save this. If we go back over to our Rules tab now, we'll see that we have set points here that we can configure for our temperature control as well as our humidity control. So we'll start by configuring our temperature control set points. You can see that we have defaults already in here. So we'll have a set point of 70. I've got an offset of 2 degrees for my stage 1, so that's where it will start at 72. Then it will try to cool back down to 70. For my second stage of cooling, I've got a 3-degree offset on top of that. So it will start at 75, and then it will stop down at 72. However, if I want my cooling to stop all the way down here at 70 for number 2, I can enable that. I can set cool 2 to end at the set point as opposed to ending at the stage value. Now in this case, I only have one heat offset value available to me because I only enabled a single heat stage on my equipment tab. So I've got an offset of 2 degrees, which will start that at 68 degrees, and again attempt to get back to 70. If I want, I can enable split set points, so that I can have a different set point for my heating and cooling, which would allow a 1 degree or 2 degree difference depending on what I'm setting here for the difference between my cooling and heating set points. Likewise down here under humidity control, it's the same kind of configuration where we have a set point and then offsets for each of the different stages. Again, we can combine the end set points if we want, and if we want, we can have split set points, which would allow us to have different humidification and dehumidification set points. If we want, we can select to control the dehumidification and humidification based on VPD as opposed to relative humidity. In this case, you're going to be setting the set point in kPa or millibar, as well as the offsets in the same way that you would with the relative humidity configuration. Now let's take a look at reheat options. If we go back to the equipment tab, we can enable reheat dehumidification. Reheat dehumidification can use either the heat 1 and compressor outputs, or can use the reheat output and compressor. If we select a reheat output and configure it here, the reheat output will be used instead of the heat output. Reheat will be used for dehumidification and will share demand with the dehumidification stage 1 output. There are several options allowing reheat dehumidification to operate either while heating or while cooling, depending on your system's capacities and capabilities. So now we've configured HVAC control to be using this environment sensor, to be operating the HVAC based on these particular outputs that we've selected, as well as controlling humidification and dehumidification from these outputs. We can see the status of the stages by looking at the icons. If they are gray, they are off. If they have a color, they are currently activated. Now let's take a look and see what happens if we select an integrated temperature humidity controller instead of a standard environment sensor. When we select a standard temperature humidity controller, we have different options on our equipment tab. Let's take a look at our rules tab. We'll see that our temperature control and humidity control options have also changed. The integrated temperature and humidity controller has specific set points and controls that are slightly different than the separate canopy sensor and relay module configuration. In the case of the temperature and humidity controller, the options are configured on the device configuration dialog. In the THC configuration dialog, we can see all the different configuration settings for that device. So we can see the operation mode. We can set it to off, auto, or force only heating or cooling modes. We can force the fan. We can set the system type. We can configure reheat options. We can configure humidification output options, as well as we can configure different time delays and other options on the THC device. So once we've configured the THC device for the system that we're running on, we can go over to our Rules tab and configure the different set points for the THC to operate on. The temperature set points are set for a day and a night time. These day and night times correspond to the day and night time of the room that the device is in. This day and night photo period information will be automatically sent to the temperature humidity controller. So these set points will be selected automatically based on whether they are in the day or the night mode. Like the standard configuration, we also have offsets for our different stages, cooling 1 and cooling 2, and heat 1 and heat 2 offsets. We also have the option to enable the cooling and heating stages to end at the set point or be staged. The same is true with humidity control. Depending on how the unit is configured, we will have one or more humidification or dehumidification stages. The relevant options will be enabled or disabled. Taking a look at the temperature humidity controller when we open it up, we will see the sensor readings in a graph, and we can also see the contacts over here, where we can manually operate them if necessary. On the Device Info tab, we'll have the option to either use the internal sensor for the temperature and humidity control, or we can specify an external sensor. When we select an external sensor, the temperature and humidity from the external sensor will be sent to the temperature humidity controller, and the decisions will be driven off of the external sensor's temperature and humidity rather than the internal sensor. We can also open the device configuration dialog in this location so that we don't have to open it from the function block. So this concludes the configuration of the HVAC function block using either the integrated temperature humidity controller or an external canopy-based environment sensor and external relay modules. The function block is highly flexible and gives many options for controlling your HVAC in your environment.